Hello everyone, and let's discuss number 40, Ronald Wilson Reagan. One of my favorite presidents because we have the same first name, and he's also the first president that I remember as a child because I was 5 years old when he was inaugurated president, and actually remember that and just thought it was neat as a 5-year-old that the president had the same first name as I did, so he was always kind of a favorite of mine growing up. The nickname the Gipper, that was a role he played in a movie. That name kind of stuck. The great communicator because of his terrific communication skills of radio and television, then movies, and certainly as president. And Dutch, I'll come back to that. Basically, when his father first saw him when he was born, he said, "Boy, such a little bit of a fat Dutchman. He makes a hell of a lot of noise." So the nickname Dutch kind of stuck ever since he was a baby when his father first saw him. Okay, so there you go. His background: actor and public official, Republican. Was governor of California for many years and was very popular in California because of certainly his acting crowd in Hollywood, people who knew him from those particular days. 1980, huge win over Jimmy Carter. I would star this election. It's often known as the Reagan Revolution. Basically, you had a lot of New Deal Democrats who switched sides and actually voted for Reagan. So you had Reagan Democrats or Democrats who became Republican. And kind of the electoral map sort of shifted, where some conservative Democrats actually became more Republican after this point. And a lot of that's actually still stayed with us even to this day. And then in 1984, huge, the largest ever electoral landslide, 525 over 13 for Walter Mondale. So a huge win for Reagan in 1984. So a very, very popular president for both terms. Not without criticism, though. All right. Now, notable events. The first one was a huge one. The assassination attempt in 1981. Only really a couple months into his presidency, the president is outside of a Washington, D.C. hotel, getting out of a limousine, and shots ring out. The president is struck during this attempt. The assassin was a guy named John Hinckley. Hinckley was actually obsessed with the actress Jodie Foster, and he thought that if he shot the president in her name, she would like him and maybe pursue him. Other bullets hit some of the Secret Service agents. The worst man who was injured was Press Secretary Brady, who got actually hit in the brain. He survived but was paralyzed certainly even to this day. So a very, very difficult way to start your presidency. But Reagan was really good at making people feel good about themselves and using humor. So right before he went into operation and surgery, before they put him under, he looked at all the surgeons and asked them very calmly, "Are any of you Democrats?" Basically making the assumption if they were Democrats, they wouldn't do a good job. They all laughed, and he made it out of the surgery very, very, very well. Okay, another big sort of title you could write down is Reaganomics, sort of a made-up word, Reaganomics. This is similar to Hoover's approach during the Depression. Big tax cuts and also spending cuts. And the idea was if you gave more people with power and wealth money, especially business owners with tax cuts, that money would trickle down and help others in the economy. And that was fine, but on the other hand, though, Reagan spent so much more on national defense that the budget actually increased while he was, cutting taxes. And this actually led to a rise in national debt. So here you have a lot of the beginning of this, we even have today, obviously, small comparison to what we have today, but beginning of deficit spending, of having huge national debts getting larger and larger each year. Okay, so terrorism was also a big issue during this time period. 1983, our embassy in Beirut, Lebanon, is exploded. A bomb goes off. Also, the Marine barracks were also attacked by bombs that same year. There was a lot of planes and hijackings. At this time, we figured out that a lot of the terrorism was tied to the country of Libya, all right, and the leader, Muammar Gaddafi. So in 1986, Reagan retaliates, and we send in fighter planes into Libya, and we bomb Tripoli in retaliation. Reagan was trying to make the point to the world that we weren't just going to sit and be victims, that if you did attack us, we would retaliate. There was a big scandal during his presidency, in the second half especially, the Iran-Contra scandal. This was very complex, but to kind of summarize it for you very easily, Reagan and the administration wanted to give and support the Contras. The Contras were a group who were fighting against the communists called the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. But at this point, Congress was unwilling to really fund the Contras, so we needed a way to do it kind of covertly. So what we do is the United States secretly sells arms, weapons, to Iran, and then, because they were fighting a war with Iraq, and we went with Iran initially, and then the money we got from Iran, we gave to the Contras to funnel to help them support their rebellion against the Sandinistas. Reagan played kind of, how should I say this, ignorant, that he didn't know about it, didn't authorize it. Now, the way Reagan handled the presidency is that Reagan picked really good people to put in really good positions and then kind of stepped back, kind of like Eisenhower, kind of this hands-off presidency where, they do the job for him. He was kind of an overall manager, so he can kind of claim ignorance. Even to this day, there's a lot of debate about how much Reagan really knew about this. All right, another big issue is U.S.-Soviet relations. During this time period, Reagan really challenges the leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, to make changes. He gives a grand speech at the Berlin Wall saying, "Gorbachev, tear down this wall." He compares them to the evil empire, like Star Wars. Reagan really loved science fiction, loved movies, and oftentimes movie quotes and lines would appear in his speeches. And that does put pressure on the Soviet leader to make changes, and the leader does. He opens things up, like American companies like Coca-Cola, McDonald's start appearing in Moscow and other parts of the Soviet Union. Now, other key component of this was the Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative, also known as Star Wars. Reagan wanted to create a ballistic missile shield in space that would basically prevent the Soviets from launching a nuclear attack against us, that the missiles will be shot down in space. Now, this is very controversial because if this went through, basically this would be the end of that MAD theory, mutually assured destruction. Because basically, if the Soviets could launch an attack, we could stop it, and if we counter-launched, we could then destroy them. Well, now, the scientists, engineers, quickly told Reagan this was impossible. But what the U.S. did, which was really smart, is that we pretended that it worked. We knew the Soviets had spies, and we knew if the Soviets thought this was possible, they would try to do the same thing. Well, the Soviets bought it. So we had all these fake tests and films that it was working, and the Soviets buy into it, and they try to do their own SDI or Star Wars system, and essentially it bankrupts them. Reagan realized that we could outspend the Soviets, and the Soviets tried to keep pace with our spending. They would basically wither from within. And that's really what happens. That, with Gorbachev opening things up, leads to greater resistance of people to make change in the Soviet Union. So he is often credited as one of the great Cold War fighters and who was responsible for the end of the Cold War. All right, miscellaneous fun facts. He's the oldest president in history. He left office when he was 78 years old, but looked very vigorous, very youthful, always on horseback, always looked like he was in really good health, very well spoken, good speeches, an actor, radio broadcaster, great use of television, great use of speeches. Again, kind of born in modest circumstances in Illinois. All right. And other things he liked to do was to work out a lot, work on his ranch. He was in the Army briefly during World War II as a captain, but then was in radio in the 30s and an actor until the mid-1960s. Not a major star, but sort of like a good B-level actor. He had some major roles, but was very popular within Hollywood, regardless. Okay, so that's Ronald Reagan. Thank you so much, and have a great day.